Welcome to the Teaching Value in Healthcare Learning Network. You're here with us to hear from leaders in the field share practical and tangible advice about how to engage curriculum and health system innovation to train a new generation of healthcare providers from diverse specialties and professions to deliver high-value care. I'm Vineet Arora, and I'm the Director of Educational Initiatives at Costs of Care, and I'll be the moderator for today's session. One of the things that we wanted to highlight about the Learning Network is that it's very diverse and it includes several major components. One of them is monthly webinars with on-the-ground national leaders like the one we're having today, as well as an active discussion board through a Google group, which also houses tools for educators like shared educational materials from across the country, as well as publications and presentations. So I'm really thrilled to be able to introduce two innovators. They're both from Banner Good Samaritan Hospital, and they're going to be describing their innovation called the Teaching Value and Choosing Wisely Healthcare Challenge. And the speakers with us today are Stephen Brown and Cheryl O'Malley. So hi Stephen, hi Cheryl, how are you doing?
Thanks, Vinny. We're doing well.
We're doing great.
Good. Now, what I wanted to do was start off with just tell us about your innovation and kind of how you implemented it locally.
Okay. So I guess about 4 years ago when there was the initial teaching value competition from the national one, it created an opportunity for Steve and I to be able to think creatively about how to improve education in our institution. So it actually came about when Steve actually forwarded to me the call for ideas, and we just started rattling off things we could potentially do that were individual projects. And what was really exciting was he and I realizing that just the call for submissions created just great energy and dialogue about different ideas. So we decided that our idea would be to create a contest internally. And so from there, we really were inspired and started to really begin to brainstorm about the details of this component and thinking about how to make it successful.
Great. I loved this because it was so meta. I remember being a judge and being like, oh, this is amazing. You know, why didn't I think of this earlier? And I should disclose that now, since you guys have done it, we did it locally, and we were thinking, well, you know, we can do it too locally. And so one other question that I had is, you know, in terms of, you know, culture is so much of what we talk about on these webinars. And people over and over again are like, how do you implement this with your culture and your leadership? Can you talk a little bit about what type of leadership buy-in that you needed and what elements in your culture helped this grow?
Yeah, a huge benefit of what we were able to do was that we had the buy-in of the medical staff who provided prize money. So the residents with the best ideas got $2,500 each, and that came from the medical staff fund. And then also our hospital administration was very supportive. And I think the thing that we did that was that worked well was we asked them to be judges to pick the best ideas, but also to pick the eventual winner. And so I think our hospital, certainly our educational system has a good culture of value and engagement from the residents and the graduate medical education. But the culture of improvement is pretty built in our hospital.
That's great. So it sounds like there was a willing health system champion, if you will, like a natural sponsor for this that you were able to engage?
Well, I think this is really important because it is important to understand what the needs are of your own system. And so it happened to be that our medical staff really wanted to develop ways to demonstrate their support, and they happen to even have extra money. So from Steve and I having been involved at the medical staff level, we knew that that was something they were willing to invest in. And at the same time, we knew that our hospital administration and our system, even though they would often speak about desiring to have residents and involved in more projects, but they often weren't aware of what the resident ideas were and how to make that connection. So we both knew that there was interest, but they really were both missing a practical opportunity in order to connect those desires. And as Steve described, over these last now 3 years, we've been able to figure out how to refine that a little bit further. But the judging piece has been critical in being able to have leaders read through the ideas and help to prioritize which ones to fund. And those are hospital leaders and health system leaders who really are able to know what's being presented at a right time.
No, that's great. Can you address, one of the things I'm fascinated by is, so what are some of the ideas that have come to fruition, and any thoughts on what a successful idea from a resident, per se, to a group of health system leaders would be?
A few of my favorite ideas. So one of the winner the first year was a family medicine resident who really worked with teams that were already in place to reduce catheter-associated urinary tract infections. So we kind of took the angle of engaging in a team that was already active in the hospital but didn't really have resident involvement. And then two of my other favorites were the winner this year was an orthopedic resident who looked at hip fracture pins and what pins are used in hip fractures. And the evidence supports actually an inexpensive pin. And he was able to basically change the way that even orthopedic attendings treated these fractures using an algorithm. Another one that I really loved was an OB resident who encouraged fewer CBCs on admission for a normal labor. So both a totally innovative idea plus incorporating in existing hospital ideas have both worked.
Yeah, no, I like the idea of partnering with existing teams, especially the value add to engage the resident. Have there been? I'm always nervous whenever we talk about challenges and competitions. I feel like, have we reached a point where, we talk about this at Cost of Care, where people are challenged out, they're like, not another challenge. And I often worry about it, especially since people might think, oh, well, I don't want to submit because I'm not going to win. Can you talk a little bit about that? How do you counter that and drum up submissions and kind of keep everybody engaged even after the challenge has, the winners have been identified?
I think that's really an important topic, and one that each institution would have to think about. What's the current benefits of participating for the residents, and then balancing the maybe a requirement to submit to be able to help people realize that they have good ideas, versus it just being that the reward money and the $2,500 is enough to say, hey, why not do it? One of the things that Steve and I knew was that we really wanted to have a very low set of criteria for submitting a submission. So we actually put a cap on the number of words just so that they really would know that we do not want a whole IRB proposal. We want just to really generate the ideas and then to have us really vet those. And then we mentor them on the development of the project once it's been accepted as one of the top 3 ideas, and so at that point then is really when it becomes more developed. So I think that has helped a lot. So there's really not a lot that they have to invest in order to submit the idea, and there's a lot that they potentially gain with our local competition.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. I'd be really curious, in terms of submissions, just ballpark, and also the word count. Are people actually asking for any technical assistance with the submissions, or the residents pretty, they're like, yeah, this is easy to do and I don't need any help? How many submissions are you guys getting a year, would you say?
Well, so the very first year we got 70 submissions.
Wow, it's overwhelming.
And then by the third year that had dropped off to about 25. So we've had a variety. I think most residents do the idea mostly by themselves. A lot of times they've talked to a faculty in their program about developing it a little bit as an idea.
I think the part of the explanation for the fewer number of submissions is that when it was our very first year, the idea of it just being an idea was very understood. But then now that they've seen the presentations at the end of the year, then they may be somewhat intimidated by the quality of the ideas and the projects that ultimately come out. So I think that that's a matter of helping them to kind of refine their expectations back down to the idea level. And then the other part that's important is that we were realizing that there were a lot of good ideas, but they were spread out among all of our programs. And so any individual program might not have been able to invest the resources to be able to help develop that idea further. And so part of what we've done is really focused mentoring efforts among the three of us leads within the competition, so that regardless of what program that resident is in, one of us is helping to make sure we help them to overcome some of the barriers. And so a lot of hospitals and a lot of programs then will have all of the residents doing something, and maybe sometimes they're just a little bit more engaged as a project team member or other kinds of things. But these top three, and ultimately we also have a fourth one that enters in kind of late in the game, they all are projects that are largely being driven by that resident and really taking a very significant leadership role. Definitely not in a silo. They have to have the system supporting them and engaged in other teams, but they really take much more of an ownership with that individual project. So I feel like it has been successful even if we only have 3 or 4 big projects that come to fruition as an institution annually, and we get some more ideas and we teach in that way by them having exposure to the difference that a resident could make. Even if it's not that every resident in the entire institution is going through all of the cycles and having a very impactful project. It's, that's the realistic part, is that you have to cast a wide net to even get a few successful projects.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And we're very early in our challenge. And so it's good to hear from you guys who are out ahead, that some of the same discussions that we're having about engaging everyone and what do you do after the winter, and kind of keep bringing everyone along is an important idea. I also was really curious about faculty effort, and so let's say there's a faculty out there who is watching the webinar or now listening to the podcast. We have that format too, and they are like, they know they need to find a willing health system partner, because we've highlighted that. What kind of time do they need to make sure that they have in order to commit to this? And specifically, I'm talking about the time to drum up submissions and organize and kind of execute that competition.
Yeah, I think it's dozens of hours, and like everything that's successful, it really needs a strong champion. And I feel like what's worked really well for Cheryl and I and our co-contributor Emily Mallon is that the three of us have still been able to put the effort into champion it, and it's been a really great collaboration. We also have great support from our medical education department and one staff member who's really taken the ball to support us. But I think like every good scholarly project, if you're not willing to invest, if you're not feeling excited about investing dozens of hours, then you need to really have a fire in your belly, because you're going to run into barriers. And so if you don't have that like 100% fire in your belly, then maybe it's not the right thing to start now.
I was going to say, too, that each year we feel a bit more energized. So as you start to kind of wane in your ability to invest, then as we see the outcomes at the end of the year, then we're rejuvenated again. But if you have a feeling that it wasn't as successful as you thought it was going to be, if you started it and it's your first year, or if you are going to start it, then just be prepared that in the initial year or two, it may not be as exciting or demonstrating the overall value for what you're doing with your time initially. but over time you're really generating a lot of engagement among your hospital leaders, the system leaders, and so that is going to gain you additional resources down the road. The other thing I would say is that when we did have our CLEAR visit, this was a very exciting way to represent resident participation in the system's quality improvement efforts. And so our CEO and CMO and they were all able to speak about that, and certainly they'll be able to do it more so as it becomes more an established part of what we do as a hospital.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point, and I know that at our CLEAR visit it was also well received, and I think it's also dual, like the health systems leaders weighing in on the projects also is a high level of engagement around setting the QI agenda and value agenda for the programs is very exciting. And so I think just to sum it up, you need a willing health system champion, a willing and dedicated, it sounds like, team of educators that really helped you guys, along with a support staff, kind of the passion, so to speak, to kind of take this idea to fruition. Now, I want to touch upon one thing, which is that you had mentioned that, at the end, when everybody sees the projects, it's like, rejuvenating for you guys and the residents get to see. Can you talk a little bit about what that event is like? We don't have an event like that, and so I would just love to understand a little bit about what do you do, who's in the room, are the health system leaders involved, and what purpose that event serves.
Yeah, so when we dreamed this up, which literally Cheryl and I just made it up as we went along, we decided to have a quality and safety day at the end of the year where there would be the big final project presentation with the big prize winner, but also posters from other residents that have been working on QI project. And so we turned it into a day that we call Quality and Safety Day. And we very early invite as high in the structure of our hospital system as we can to be judges, because they might not just come, but if you tell them, oh, you're a judge, or to be a speaker. And so we've had people as high as, really the VP of our whole health system come, and when they brag to other people about how amazing the residents are and how amazing the residency programs are, that's an incredible reward. So it's really a two-part. The one part is when we pick the project, and then the final grand finale is the Quality and Safety Day.
And I would say that it has been a critical component, because all of us get a lot of emails, a lot of newsletters announcing, hey, this was great, what this resident did. But to sit in this auditorium and see residents present their own work, and it's short, it's about a 7-minute presentation and some time for questions, and their presentation includes kind of the return on investment, which has been incredible, with often just a 6-month project looking at the cost savings early on and then anticipated cost savings. So when you're trying to be able to drum up future support financially for the ongoing work, being able to demonstrate that value to your stakeholders is really key. And we've really found no other way than having them be a judge, where they're sitting right there in the room. Yeah. They must listen and kind of respond. It's a unique opportunity, and it also even introduces them, and they're in the room with one another. So these are key leaders within graduate medical education and in the health system. So they're all there seeing the same thing, and then there's downstream conversations that come from considering the potential of it.
We've also brought in outside speakers to be sort of the keynote, and so we had 2 of your co-authors, Neil Shaw the first year and Chris Moriarty's this year, that gave really great presentations. We engaged them as a judge, and so maybe that's why we won the contest too, because we invited you guys to come.
That was after.
Yeah, we pandered a little bit with our meta idea about the contest.
Well, but it helps the institution to also know that there's national recognition for this work, and it gives some extra credibility to the efforts.
There's actually experts in high value care, and we actually gave your book as a prize the last 2 years. So if you notice a spike in sales of your book in Phoenix the last couple of years, I think that's why.
That's awesome. Well, we appreciate it. I should also say one thing that I was thinking about, and just more from my local experience, is you get these residents, they write this great idea, they win, and then they're leading this QI project, right, or around value. That's a daunting task. So especially in the context of residency. So can you just so for an educator out there, and including myself, how is there any upfront training investment made in those winners, or how does everything come together so that resident is capable of doing this?
Try to really mentor them, and so we have one-on-one mentorship of our 3 co-leaders, but we don't prepare them, and actually that can actually be overwhelming. So that's actually a good idea.
Yeah, I'm amazed. I think that their energy really drives them to be successful in a lot of ways, and they often seek out the help that they need. Sometimes it's internal or it always includes a component within their own specialty, and then we are sort of mentoring them to make sure they're getting what they need from their own program, because we're not always even mentoring residents within our own program. So sometimes it's just an email informal check-in because they're really just cruising on things. Other times you need to step in and help facilitate some conversations that they need with key individuals. But I think that this, and faculty who've mentored residents in research areas, it would be similar, where sometimes you give them an idea and all of a sudden they come back with this really well-vetted proposal that you're just amazed with, and then other times it takes a little bit more encouragement. But these are all really, they're self-starters in the sense that they submitted the idea, they got the funding, they got some energy around them with the idea, and I've just been amazed at what they do, and then how they even continue it on. The resident who won this year regarding the orthopedic implants and the cost savings that was going to be with that, a couple weeks ago I ran into him, and he was asking me a question about who within our health system negotiates rates for payment for hip replacement surgeries. And so, clearly he was already at a level almost like a chief medical officer or somebody who would be thinking about those next questions. And he had already won the contest at that point, and he just really cares and has found this as an area of passion. So that's been amazing to see.
Can I just share one of my favorite moments from this year's contest was a surgery resident was getting surgeons to change what was in their trays during surgery, because there's a big cost variation in what supplies you ask for. And he says, and I got 10 surgeons to change their practice. And then he paused and he says, just to make sure you all heard that, I got 10 surgeons to change their practice. So some things are just personality driven, and that was a good example of one that was really personality driven.
No, that's great. I love these on-the-ground stories of residents who are changing the healthcare system with support from both of you and your team as mentors as well as health system leaders. Before we close, is there anything else that you would like to tell us or educators out there and health system leaders looking for innovations like this to adopt, things that you might have wished you had known earlier, for example, when you started the project that would ease a smoother adoption?
I just think you just got to start. I think if you worry too much about the hurdles, and I think in some ways we sort of almost naively blundered into it. You just have to start. If you're waiting for the perfect moment and the perfect everything, it's never going to come.
And to have those conversations with leaders within the hospital and the system to understand what are priorities to them and to introduce the idea. There was a few key meetings we had to just make sure that they understood and that they could support us, and that helped early on. And then to realize that when I tell people that we needed $10,000 to support this from the prize money standpoint, they think that that's pretty daunting. But there's a lot of things that we do within GME that are part of kind of the routine budget. And certainly when you look at downstream return on investment, pretty soon you realize gosh, that's just a drop in the bucket, especially considering all that these residents do. And just to clarify, that $2,500 is not for project-related expenses for us. It's just an investment in them and their idea. So it's just basically prize money. And if they need other resources, we've never had anybody come and ask for other resources that they need, but we do support their travel to present when they go to outside meetings or to national meetings to present their outcomes. So that was already part of our GME budget to be able to do that. But it's nice for them to just get the money. We don't have to worry about any of the documentation of recording expenses or budget or other kinds of things. They just get that as an investment in their work.
That's great. I'm wondering if, one thing we might be able to post on the discussion board is maybe a submission form or the rules, because overcoming that activation energy, as you talked about, if you had the rules right there and just were adapting, it'd be very, very easy to do. So that's great. Well, I want to thank you both for a really lively discussion about implementing the Teaching Value Choosing Wisely Challenge locally at Banner Good Samaritan Medical Center, and also just on behalf of Cost of Care and ABIM Foundation, thank you for submitting and winning the challenge, and also keeping up the good work. We look forward to great things from you guys, and now your residents too. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much.